See, I'm going to give you just kind of an outline of where we're going over these next few minutes. We're going to see Matthew chapter 28. I'm going to briefly kind of give you an exposition of that so you understand what this chapter is about, what these verses are about. And then I want to point out an application for you. I want to show you motivation and a method for replicating. And then we're going to conclude with a scorecard. So how do we evaluate our own hearts and our lives as a disciple, as a church making disciples? So if you're there, Matthew chapter 28, I'm going to start reading in verse 16 in just a second. But this takes place after Jesus has lived his life. He went to the cross, he died and rose again, and his resurrection is recorded at the beginning of chapter 28. And here he is making an appearance as the resurrected Lord to his disciples. So the 11 who had followed him. Judas had already passed away. So he's appearing to the 11. And here on the heels of his life, of his resurrection, he now gives them a parting command at what's called the Great Commission. How are they supposed to live now? What are they supposed to do? Because he's about to ascend to the Father and send the Spirit. What are they supposed to do now? Look at verse 16 of Matthew 28. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." Now, this text answers several questions. Jesus answers the question, first, what are his disciples supposed to do? What's the commission? What's he commissioning them to do? We see that in verse 19. They are to make disciples of all nations. For 3 years, these 11 guys had lived life on life with Jesus. They had traveled with him and walked with him. They left their jobs to spend more time with him. They had heard him teach. They had seen him perform miracles. They were there when he was crucified, and now they see him risen again. They had personally experienced as Jesus, the ultimate disciple maker, had lived his life with them. He had made disciples among them. They were now to take what they had learned from Jesus and do the same thing with other people. Make disciples. Where? Where are they supposed to go? He says, of all nations. It would begin here in the area of Jerusalem and Israel, but it would spread out. And even in the subsequent years and decades, these apostles would spread out and go different areas to different locations and preach the good news and make disciples. And so that's what they're supposed to do. They were supposed to help take the initiative. They were supposed to take the initiative to help other people follow Jesus the way Jesus had done with them. So that's the first question. What should be done? They should make disciples. Next question. How are disciples made? Well, Jesus gives us the answer here. How do you go about making a disciple? Well, verse 19, Jesus says, go. You have to move outward. You have to go. You can't stay in the same seat and make disciples. You have to go taking the initiative to encounter other people. Verse 19, he says, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So baptism is a key part of that. And then in verse 20, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. So those three actions, going, baptizing, and teaching